November 17th, 1941. Washington, D.C., inside a converted apartment building on Nebraska Avenue. The room smells of cigarette smoke and mimeograph ink. Agnes Meyer Driscoll sits hunched over a desk cluttered with cipher tables, her eyes scanning columns of 5-digit numbers that have defeated every cryptanalyst who's touched them. The Japanese JN-25 naval code. Unbreakable, they said. Around her, Navy cryptanalysts shuffle between desks, their footsteps muffled by worn carpeting. Typewriters clack in irregular rhythms. Someone coughs, but Driscoll doesn't hear any of it. She's staring at a pattern, something in the additives, the way certain number groups repeat with just enough variation to seem random. Her pencil hovers over the paper. At 49 years old, Miss Aggie has already broken Japanese codes the Navy brass said couldn't be touched. In 1935, she cracked the Japanese fleet code. In 1940, she made breakthroughs in their diplomatic systems. But JN-25 is different. Layered encryption, a code book of 45,000 groups, each representing a word or phrase, then disguised by additive tables of random numbers. The mathematics alone could break a person. You're not just solving one puzzle, you're solving two simultaneously, without knowing where one ends and the other begins. Most cryptanalysts lasted weeks before requesting transfer. Driscoll has been at it for months, building recovery tables digit by digit, stealing meaning from chaos, one fraction at a time. December 7th changes everything. Pearl Harbor burns, and suddenly every intercept matters. Every undecrypted message could contain the next attack plan. The pressure in that Nebraska Avenue building becomes suffocating. Driscoll works 18-hour days, sometimes sleeping at her desk. The additives are the key, she knows it now. If she can strip away that layer, the codebook groups beneath become vulnerable. By January 1942, she's done it. Not completely, JN-25 variants keep evolving, but enough. Her team can now read fragments, then sentences, then entire operational orders. A message intercepts mentions Midway. Another discusses carrier movements toward AF. The intelligence flows from Nebraska Avenue to Pacific Fleet headquarters like water through a broken dam. The Japanese Navy has no idea. Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku continues using JN-25 for his most sensitive communications, confident in its security. Why wouldn't he be? The code has multiple layers of encryption, changes periodically, requires massive codebooks that would take years to reconstruct. American cryptanalysts, he assumes, are still fumbling in the dark. But they're not. By March 1942, Driscoll and her expanded team at OP-20G, the Navy's Signals Intelligence Office, are reading roughly 15% of intercepted JN-25 traffic. 15% doesn't sound like much until you realize that includes operational orders, fleet dispositions, supply schedules. The kind of intelligence that wins battles before they're fought. The breakthrough spreads across the Pacific. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort's Station HIPO in Hawaii begins exploiting Driscoll's methods. Commander Rudolph Fabian's Station CAST in the Philippines does the same, evacuating to Australia as Japanese forces advance. 3 stations working in parallel, sharing recoveries, building the codebook back one group at a time. Nobody outside the intelligence community knows Agnes Driscoll's name. She works in anonymity, forbidden from discussing her work even with her own family. The building on Nebraska Avenue has no sign, no indication of what happens inside. Just civilian clerks and Navy personnel entering and leaving at irregular hours, carrying locked briefcases and speaking in careful whispers. But in the Pacific, her work is about to change history. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commanding the Pacific Fleet from Pearl Harbor, begins receiving intelligence summaries based on JN-25 decrypts. Japanese intentions, stripped of their cipher protection. He reads about planned operations before the Japanese admirals have even briefed their own crews. The Japanese send a message. A major operation planned for early May against RZP and MO. Driscoll's team decrypts it. RZP is Tulagi. MO is Port Moresby. The target is clear, the Coral Sea. For the first time in a naval history, a fleet will sail into battle, knowing the enemy's entire plan before the first shot is fired. May 7th, 1942. The Coral Sea, northeast of Australia. Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher commands Task Force 17 from the carrier Yorktown, and he knows exactly where the Japanese are. Not from reconnaissance, from decrypted messages sent 3 days ago. Japanese carriers approaching from the north. Invasion force heading for Port Moresby. Every ship, every heading, laid bare. The Battle of Coral Sea becomes the first naval engagement fought entirely by aircraft, but it's won before the planes launch. Fletcher positions his carriers based on intelligence so precise it feels like cheating. The Japanese think they have surprise. They don't. American dive bombers find the carrier Shoho and sink her in minutes. Scratch one flat top, the pilot radios. The Japanese lose tactically, but still don't suspect their codes are compromised. Bad luck, they conclude. American reconnaissance got fortunate. Admiral Yamamoto proceeds with his next operation, the decisive battle he's been planning since Pearl Harbor. The target, Midway Island, the bait to draw out and destroy the American carrier fleet. He sends the operational orders via JN-25. At Station HIPO, Commander Rochefort's team intercepts everything. Dates, forces, objectives, even the diversionary attack on the Aleutians meant to split American attention. One problem. The target designation AF appears in multiple messages, but its identity isn't certain. Rochefort believes it's Midway. Washington isn't convinced. They need proof. Rochefort orchestrates a trick. He has Midway send an uncoded message reporting their water distillation plant has broken down. 2 days later, Japanese intelligence sends a message, intercepted and decrypted, reporting that AF is short of fresh water. Confirmation. Midway is the target. Nimitz commits everything he has. June 4th, 1942. Midway Atoll. Admiral Yamamoto commands the largest naval force Japan has ever assembled. 4 fleet carriers, 11 battleships, 16 cruisers, dozens of destroyers. He expects to catch the Americans by surprise, to annihilate their carriers in one crushing blow. Instead, 3 American carriers wait in ambush north of Midway, positioned exactly where JN-25 decrypts said they needed to be. The Japanese spot Midway exactly when the decrypts predicted. Their first strike launches at dawn. American patrol planes shadow the Japanese fleet, radioing positions, but the real advantage comes from foreknowledge. Fletcher and Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance know the Japanese battle plan better than some Japanese officers. They know when the carriers will be vulnerable, rearming their aircraft. At 10:22 a.m., American dive bombers catch 3 Japanese carriers with their decks loaded with fuel lines and armed aircraft. Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu erupt in flames within minutes. By day's end, 4 Japanese fleet carriers, 1/3 of their entire carrier force, rest on the ocean floor. Japan's naval offensive dies at Midway, and they never understand why. The Japanese conduct investigations. They interrogate captured American pilots, searching for evidence of code compromise. They analyze American response times, searching for patterns that suggest foreknowledge. They find nothing conclusive. American submarines, they decide. Lucky reconnaissance. Brilliant tactical decisions. Anything but the truth. That Agnes Driscoll cracked their primary naval code 18 months ago. Through 1943 and into 1944, JN-25 continues yielding intelligence. Submarine commanders received decrypted convoy routes and sink supply ships before they reached their destinations. Admiral Nimitz tracks Japanese fleet movements across the Pacific. Station HIPO decrypts messages about Admiral Yamamoto's inspection tour of forward bases, including his flight schedule and aircraft type. April 18, 1943. American P-38 fighters intercept Yamamoto's transport plane over Bougainville. Exactly where the decrypts said he'd be, exactly when they said he'd be there. The architect of Pearl Harbor dies in the jungle. The Japanese still don't change their codes. Enhanced radio security, they conclude. Better operational planning, not code compromise. By late 1944, the strategic situation has shifted so dramatically that JN-25's value diminishes. Japan's fleet rarely sortie. Fuel shortages keep ships in port. But for 3 critical years, 1942 through 1944, American intelligence read Japanese naval communications with devastating effectiveness. Battles won, ambushes laid, convoys destroyed, all because of mathematical breakthroughs made in a converted apartment building in Washington. Agnes Meyer Driscoll never receives public recognition during the war. Security classifications bury her achievements for decades. She retires from the Navy in 1949, her contributions known only to the cryptanalysts who worked beside her and the admirals who read the intelligence she provided. The Japanese never officially learned their code was broken until after the war ended. The secret died hard. In 1945, when American occupation forces arrived in Japan, they found Japanese Navy records still attributing their defeats to tactical failures and American luck. Yamamoto's staff had investigated code security multiple times and found it sound. The possibility that every major operation had been telegraphed to the enemy in advance, that their most secure code had been transparent for years, never entered their calculation, the perfect secret. One the enemy never suspected even existed.